This is NASA TV.
Copy that, Endurance. You are go to initiate suit leak checks.
Go for suit leak checks.
And on the screen on the far right here in Mission Control Houston, you do see a view of Crew-3 as they step through those procedures to check out their spacesuits. The suits will be pressurized during the dynamic phases of flight during re-entry. And here are your Crew-3 astronauts suited up inside the SpaceX Dragon Endurance.
SpaceX Endurance, 4 good leak checks.
And we see the same on the ground, Endurance. I do have a request for Tom and Matthias. I noticed that your guys' outer zipper is a little bit open. We're a little bit concerned with the configuration there and might ask that you get those fully closed.
They're looking at it now, on the outer zippers.
And 4 good suit leak checks for Crew-3. Crew-3 undocked from the International Space Station at 12:20 a.m. Central Time, 1:20 a.m. Eastern Time. And a splashdown is scheduled for 11:43 p.m. Central Time later this evening, 12:43 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be May 6th. We are targeting Tampa as the prime splashdown location, and weather looking good so far for that splashdown in just a couple hours from now. Crew-3's mission began 6 months ago on November 10th, 2021, when they launched from historic Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Crew-3 made their journey to the International Space Station and docked with it on November 11th, 2021. They spent 175 days on board the International Space Station and completed hundreds of science investigations while on board. The crew also took part in day-to-day operations during Expeditions 66 and 67. And all 4 completed spacewalks throughout their mission to support the space station. And since Crew-4 arrived to the space station just last week, Crew-3 worked alongside them in a direct handover. During their time on the International Space Station, Crew-3 saw the arrival of 8 visiting vehicles and the departure of 7 visiting vehicles. Everything continuing to go as planned ahead of Splashdown later tonight. Splashdown is scheduled for 11:43 p.m. Central Time, 12:43 a.m. Eastern Time off the coast of Florida.
Dragon, SpaceX, ComCheck.
Dragon has you, Endurance has you at Perth.
Great to hear from you.
So as you just heard, we had confirmation from Commander Raja Chari.
Dragon, SpaceX, expect automated chute deployment.
Endurance copy is expecting automated chute deployment with the silent GPS reacquisition.
We see the same. Expect deployment at standard altitude.
Endurance copy.
So there's our first view of Dragon Endurance making its re-entry to planet Earth.
6 months in space, and this is the first time that these crew members have been in Earth's atmosphere in that time. As you just heard, we're standing by for drogue parachute deploy, so those 2 drogue chutes. The crew members will probably feel a little bit of a jolt as those deploy, but that's why they are strapped into their seats safely, those custom fitted seats. And after the drogues deploy, it'll slow the capsule to about 350 miles per hour before we see the 4 main parachutes deploy and slow it down to about 15 at the point it'll splash down in the ocean off the coast of Tampa.
Yeah, now right now, or it may have already happened, the seats that the crew members are in actually automatically rotate 26 degrees in order to keep the crew within the acceptable G limits for entry and landing. As I mentioned before, if we didn't have these drogue chutes, which they deploy around 18,000 feet, so we're expecting to see those pop out any moment, without those drogue chutes, we would have to make...
Dragon SpaceX, brace for drogue window.
So without these drogue chutes, we'd have to make the main parachutes 3 times stronger and heavier. Expecting those drogues to deploy any moment.
And of course, those drogues deploy automatically, but if needed, the crew can deploy them manually. They have a hardline button in the capsule. It's beneath their display where they monitor the mission.
And of course, after the drogue chutes deploy, we'll see those main parachutes, which help to further decelerate the vehicle and allow it to make a soft landing there in the Gulf of Mexico.
Great image of those drogues deploying.
All right, looks like we have 2 healthy drogues there.
And
Endurance is visual on 2 drogues.
Copy, we see the same. Descent rate nominal.
And if you noticed, as those drogues were deploying, the drogues didn't open up to that full size you saw all the way at first. It's called reefing. They open up more slowly so that it's not as big of a jolt to the capsule and to the parachute system. And again, these will help slow the capsule to 350 miles per hour, which still seems fast, but compared to 17,500.
There we can see the deployment of those main parachutes. The vehicle's velocity is about 119 miles per hour.
Yeah, SpaceX Dragon, we see 4 chutes, and we could distinctly feel the 2 disc reefs. It looks like final descent rates.
Yeah, that reefing action that you just mentioned playing out right in front of us.
And Raja, we see the same.
Excellent views here. 4 main parachutes. These are the last big physical change we'll see for Dragon as it continues its descent. It will slow the capsule down to about 15 miles per hour before splashing down. And teams are in position. They're moving their way closer to where the Dragon will splash down. Again, we'll have some fast boats that will approach the capsule first, ensure it's safe for the recovery ship to approach. And within an hour of these crew members splashing down on Earth, we expect to see them getting out of the capsule.
Copy 800.
Now, for those that might not be familiar with Dragon itself, over the lifespan of the Dragon program, we've had great success with water landing, which is what we are attempting today. We've had with 25 successful splashdowns, and they're...
Copy 600.
And we do that water landing because it's simpler, therefore more reliable, provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. Now, we did have to learn how to make Dragon waterproof, but once you do that, it's very much a rinse, review, reuse type process.
And splashing down is not necessarily a new technique.
400 meters.
Copy 400.
Only 400 meters, so getting closer and closer back to planet Earth. But splashing down is also how the Apollo astronauts returned to Earth.
Absolutely.
So this capsule is not dissimilar to this design works very well, I should say. The capsule design when it comes to ablating heat as well as protecting crew members. And a very smooth ride home so far for our astronauts.
200 meters, bracing.
Copy, 200 and bracing.
The teams are about 3 nautical miles away from the splashdown site, so it's going to take them a little bit of time to get there in terms of the large vessel, but there is a fast boat, as we call it, that will be able to get to the capsule very, very quickly, as we will see here in just a couple of moments. Once again, all right, as you can see there on your screen, Dragon Endurance carrying Crew-3.
Copy, we see the same and name the top.
Crew-3 crew has splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Florida. So right now, Dragon is
on behalf of the entire SpaceX team, welcome home. Willkommen auf der Erde. It's been an absolute honor to support you on your mission, Endurance crew, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
Thanks, Sarah. We're glad to be back. Thanks for letting us take Endurance on its shakedown cruise. Looking forward to watching many more flights of Endurance in the future. That was a great ride, and enjoyed working with the NASA and SpaceX team. Thanks for getting us to the space station and back safely.
Appreciate the words, Raja.
Time in about a minute.
All right, those fast boats have gotten the go to move toward the vehicle.
Yeah, so we're now excitedly awaiting the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias inside. Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. As you can see there, it is patiently waiting in the water for that recovery team.
Dragon SpaceX, request permission to come on board via display camera view only.
You guys are welcome on board. You guys are welcome on board.
Copy that and work. Copy that and work.
Now the crew right now are still in their seats. This is similar to when you arrive on an airplane. You have landed on the tarmac, but you're not at the gate yet. You don't want to take off those seatbelts just yet. So they are allowing the teams here in Hawthorne to take a look inside the vehicle as these fast boats approach.
SpaceX Endurance, we've got tally on recovery lights, and one complaint is these water bottles are super heavy.
Copy that, Raja. We'll work on it.
Raj, of course, making a gravity joke there.
Yeah, for the first time in 6 months, everything has a little more weight to it now that they're back in 1G on Earth. But today we saw them jettison that trunk section and perform the final burn, that deorbit burn, very shortly ago to place them on the trajectory we had them toward the Gulf of Mexico. They successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, made it through that entry interface, which we had that loss of comm as we expected, and then regained shortly after. And then the deployment of the parachutes, which slowed the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. We had amazing views of that tonight. And so we're now following the final part of Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias' journey as Dragon is lifted out of the water and placed on the recovery boat. Not there quite yet, but sooner than later.
Yeah. As Leah mentioned before, there's very standard medical checkouts. The crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter. If no additional medical assistance is needed, the crew will board a waiting NASA plane and depart for Houston. Now for Matthias, the European Space Agency has a plane that will take him to Europe. Yeah, so this person's about to make their egress from the capsule momentarily. Whoop.
Tally-ho.
There we go. Allons-y.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for capsule lift.
Endurance copies.
My heart rate went up a little bit just envisioning having to do what that person just did
Oh, sign me
in
up.
the seawater at night. Oh, man.
And here we go. Crew Dragon Endurance being lifted onto the Shannon recovery vessel.
Pretty cool view there of the heat shield now that it has been lifted out of the water. You can see the water sloshing around there. That is actually where the parachutes deploy from. The main parachutes are located in that bay there under the side hatch. The drogue parachutes are located in the bays above the side hatch.
That's a great view, as you mentioned, of the side hatch. So when they place Dragon in the nest, as they're preparing to do now, they will pull it closer to an egress platform, because this is significantly high off the ground, maybe 10 feet off the ground. So there's an egress platform that is level with the side hatch. That way it makes it easier for us to help the crew members out of the capsule. Capsule will be centered and oriented, as you can see, and then Dragon will be moved to that hangar underneath the helipad on the ship. Yes, that will prepare us to open the hatch.
We have a great view of Dragon there, positioned in the nest. We're just waiting to see it translated or moved back to the platform where the crew will egress. It looked like the capsule was being hosed down a little bit just to get the some of that salt water out of those bays. Once again, that bay at the top there is where the drogue parachutes are stored. And then the bay at the bottom underneath the side hatch is where the main parachutes were stored. So you can see that it's a pretty compact space. You know, it's the parachutes go through a very thorough and well-checked packing process before they are actually stored in those bays.
Dragon SpaceX, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Endurance copies. Standing by for side hatch opening.
We had splashdown only 40 minutes ago, so in that time we have been able to lift and prepare the capsule for these astronauts to egress.
Right now they're just wiping down the areas around the side hatch that might still be a little wet from splashdown. Just want to make sure that when the side hatch is opened and we install the protective fittings, that everything is dry, just to eliminate any possibility that nobody slips or anything whenever they are making their way out. There we can see the side hatch is open.
Some applause from team members on board. And that's their first friendly face that they've gotten to see in person in 6 months, aside from their crewmates on the International Space Station.
I could imagine that after spending 6 months in space, all of this must feel really weird. We heard him make a joke earlier about the water bottle feeling heavy. We can see that Commander Raja Chari has now egressed the capsule and is making his way onto the rollaway. Looked like we had some thumbs up there just momentarily.
That is mission specialist Kayla Barron receiving some help as she makes her way outside.
All right, looks like Kayla Barron has made her way down Dragon's accessibility slide and is going to be making her way to the medical tents. I think I see a smile on her face.
We have one more crew member inside Crew Dragon. That's European Space Agency astronaut Matthias Maurer, one of the mission specialists. And that'll be our last crew member to exit Crew Dragon Endurance. All four will now be receiving those routine medical checks inside the bays on recovery vessel Shannon before being escorted to the helicopter that will take them back to land. Their first steps on dry land in 6 months.
Once the recovery vessel and the Dragon capsule get back to the port, the recovery team will perform additional inspections on the capsule before loading Dragon onto a flatbed truck at the SpaceX facility in Cape Canaveral for post-processing.
This all kicked off on November 10th, 2021 from historic launch pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After successful liftoff and separation from Falcon 9, Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias made a 24-hour flight on board Dragon to the International Space Station. Since arriving at the space station, they spent nearly 6 months as members of Expedition 6667, that'll be 175 days to be exact, executing science experiments, spacewalks, and repairs while aboard the orbiting laboratory.
Of course, their journey home began last night, May 4th, Star Wars Day, when they closed the hatch to Dragon and undocked later at 10:20 p.m. Pacific time. After 4 successful departure burns and a phasing burn to line up their orbit, Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias rested for a few hours before waking up to prepare for re-entry this morning. As you saw earlier, we jettisoned Dragon's trunk and performed our final on-orbit maneuver, the deorbit burn, at about 8:53 p.m. Pacific to send Dragon on the path home. The spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and slowed its descent with successful deployment of its 2 drogue parachutes, followed by the 4 main parachutes, of course, with the final splashdown occurring off the coast of Florida at 9:43 p.m. Pacific time. Following that successful splashdown, we saw Dragon recovery experts move in and prepare Dragon Endurance for its lift onto the recovery vessel. And just a little less than an hour ago, following in less than an hour following splashdown, we saw Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias make their way out of Dragon and into the recovery ship's medical facilities, safe and sound.
So next up, they will catch a helicopter flight back to shore. They'll transfer to an aircraft that will take them home. So Rasha, Tom, and Kayla will take that NASA plane for the short flight back to Houston, and Matthias will head back to Europe. They will be reunited with their families to bring an end to this mission. It has been a true honor and a privilege to share their journey with you as we continue this new era in human spaceflight. But of course, we always have more coming up soon.